Serious, what is the creepiest or most unexplained thing that's happened to you that you still think and or wonder about to this day? My family has tons of weird paranormal stuff, but the one I actively think about had nothing to do with ghosts or anything. My best friend vanished in like 4th or 5th grade. Her whole family just up and left without warning. Got a phone call from her months later saying she missed me and she was safe but wasn't allowed to give any details. Someone came in the room and she had to hang up. To this day I have no freaking clue what happened. Every now and then I try to find her on social media. No luck. Yet. About 1973, I went to work. Got out of the car. Walked to the entrance and on the way saluted Warrant Officer Fadi because he was in uniform. He had always worn civilian clothes. He waved me on and said he'd be in a minute. I got to my office and expected to be the first one there because I always got there first as the lowest ranking guy in the office and had to make the coffee. I was surprised that the chief, a captain, and his senior sergeant were already in the office. The captain asked me to sit down at my desk. I thought I was in trouble. He said he had some bad news. Warrant Officer Fadi was killed in a head-on collision at 3 AM that morning. I protested that I had just seen him outside in the parking lot. The captain said he and the sergeant had identified the body just an hour earlier. 1988. We were renting a refurbished house that was part log cabin from the 1700s. Was on the john in the bathroom when I heard 3 very loud knocks on the wall beneath the bathroom window. Looked out the window, nada. 30 seconds later it happened again. And again nothing outside. Later, wife and I decide to plant some stuff beneath the bathroom window outside. And 4 inches down we hit a concrete slab. Turns out the bathroom used to be entranceway to the log house. Spooky as hell. Stayed over at a friend's house. In the middle of the night I woke up to what sounded like someone walking in the attic above us. Thought nothing more of it and went back to sleep. Wake up and on his ceiling were footprints in a perfect circle around his light bulb as if someone was walking upside down around the light. Showed it to him and he just shrugged and said he thought his house was haunted. But it didn't bother him. That was 30 years ago and I still remember it like it was yesterday. I was 20 staying with my husband's friends in West Palm Beach. FL. In the middle of the night, my husband screamed. I opened my eyes and there was a dark figure of a man standing at the foot of the bed. He stood at my husband's feet. I screamed and leapt out of the bed hitting the wall light switch. The figure was gone and our friends were banging on the door. It was very strange that we both saw the exact same thing. Driving down a dark highway in Alabama with my fiance when 2 white orbs, about 3-5 inches in diameter, came through the upper right side of my windshield and out through the roof. I thought I lost my mind but she looked equally as shocked as I did. And she described the exact same thing. We were still in a bit of a shock couple minutes later when we came upon an SUV flipped upside down. A lone police officer waved us around the wreck. No one was in the car. We guess the EMTs already came. We can't shake the feeling that maybe the 2 orbs were 2 people that died in the accident. It isn't very interesting as I live a pretty chill life, but a month or so after my cat went missing the doors started to open a little like they would when she was around. And sometimes I felt cold patches on my body where she used to sleep and the bed dipped. I'm not sure if ghosts are real or not, but I like to think it was her watching out for me. My family's dog was very sick. I was at my work when my office's door closed slowly on its own. My dog liked to close my room's door slowly like that. And my office's door has never closed like that before or after that. 5 minutes later, my mom called me to tell me my dog died just minutes before. This wasn't creepy but very strange. So I came home from school one day and I was unpacking my bag. I accidentally dropped a sandwich that I hadn't eaten earlier out from my bag, and when I bent down to get it, it was gone. I looked all over that floor and no sandwich. It just disappeared into thin air. To this day I believe that sandwich went to the underworld. Edit. Wow, my most liked comment was about losing a turkey sandwich to the void. I thank you all. Me and my father have a pretty easygoing relationship. We love to joke with each other. One day, I saw him walk out of his room and go to the bathroom. I remember waving hello. And he waved back with a smile. Moments later, I see him walk out of his room again. And I tell him, "Dad, I literally just saw you walk to the bathroom a few seconds ago." As I mentioned the easygoing relationship. He must have thought I was joking. And replied, "Yep. I have now unlocked teleportation abilities." Obviously, I knew that this was impossible. For some reason. Though. I never talked about it. All I know is that I saw something go from one place to another. And it interacted with me. When I was about 10 years old, I fell asleep under the covers. I woke in the middle of the night to find the covers off and neatly folded and placed just above my pillow. I'll never understand this. My best explanation is that I did it while sleepwalking. The problem is that I never folded any sheets and did not have muscle memory for it, and that I have no history of sleepwalking before or after this night. One of many that stick with me. When I was in high school, I used to work at a movie theater. One night while doing a theater check, I stopped and looked at one of my managers and told her that we were going to get hit by lightning. Maybe 10-15 seconds later, lightning struck. We had to evacuate cause we lost power. Didn't get the power turned back on till the next afternoon. I once was minding my own business in the bathroom. Not on the toilet or anything, when I suddenly went blind. Fell over and my head hit the side of the tub. I couldn't feel it. But I sure as shit heard it. Woo-woo-wung, I thought I died. I recovered like immediately, and nothing like that has happened to me before that or since then. Edit. Whoa. Didn't think I was gonna get any kind of response to this. Thanks. Everyone. Capital D. My grandfather used to sleep in the kitchen, while me and my grandmother slept in the living room. I was trying to sleep, and I heard mumbles from him. He was praying. Next thing I knew, it was morning, and he was dead. A few days after we buried him, I kept waking up at around 3 AM because I felt like someone was staring at me. Around the 10th of December, 10 months after he died, we were decorating our house with Christmas decors. And I snapped a photo of the decor we had in our kitchen. There was a brown figure standing right behind the decors I snapped a pic of. It wasn't as scary as it was sad, because he was still watching us. Wishing we were still together. I don't have the pic anymore. I took it on 2013. And the phone I used to snap the pic disappeared, even though I always keep it close to me whenever I sleep. I was driving at night after a football game as a high school student. My younger sister was in the passenger seat and my friend was in the middle back seat, leaning forward to chat with us easier. We were dropping my friend off before heading home, and driving down a pretty dark road to get there. We lived in a rural area, so no street lights. Suddenly, my sister and friend both gasp and I step on the brakes, thinking they must have seen a deer or something. They're both in shock, asking me if I just saw that old man who flashed up in the middle of the road and then disappeared. I hadn't seen anything, but I was terrified. They were both so shocked and had the exact same reaction. My friend didn't even want to get out at his house once we got there, he was so scared. Teenagers playing in the snow with friends building tunnels behind parents' house. There were 5 of us. About dusk, as we were playing, some object with multicolored lights flew in and hovered off to our north about 50 feet away. I ran on the porch and called for my mother. As I waited, I looked over the railing and we all were just froze looking. What seemed like 5 minutes and no mom. It abruptly flew off as I went to call again for my mom. She called to me that she isn't going to come back and look if we were going to hide again. We hadn't hidden, we were there, standing out in the open. No one talked about it after, but it is burned in my memory 25 years later. When I was coming back from my ex's girlfriend at the time house, I saw something at least 7 feet tall in the woods and I stopped to look, but it took off. The more I researched it, the more it fit the description of a skinwalker. My much loved brother-in-law Jeremy was killed when a driver high on meth hit his car. A year later, on the first anniversary of his death, my husband was cooking dinner when he got a phone call from Jeremy's phone. The phone has been destroyed in the crash. My husband started shaking, getting weak and sank onto the floor. He could not pick it up. He knows it was his brother's way of letting him know he loved him. It was going to be okay and just general brother business of scaring the shit out of each other. It actually brought him a lot of peace and healing in his grief. I have dreams about events that I haven't experienced yet but will do. Most recently, I had a dream 2 months before my SAT test where I could clearly see the room. And even the people, and when I sat in the room it was trippy because it was exactly like my dream. Same chair. Same faces. Same room orientation. And I hadn't been on campus for months. I had the same thing happen with a few other big events in my life. Changing schools. Meeting important people. Applying to uni. And there's a few that haven't happened yet. It's creepy. It's unnerving. But I don't know what it means and I don't want it to stop. I just want an explanation of some sort. I turn to witchy and spiritual friends to ask them, and so far my only explanation has been that my spirit guide is guiding me. But I'm not 100% sure on anything. I currently work in a provincial campground where at 10:30 PM I have to walk around the park to enforce quiet hour rules. There is a more remote part of the park which is what myself and co-workers have nicknamed the Park Ghost or PG when talking in public. I personally have seen blue orbs of light moving at speed through the trees silently. Black masses move around the outer edge of my flashlight. Had the hair on my neck pulled, not aggressively. Heard whispers in my ear. Had the gate shack when nobody was near it. Had my stomach become very upset when I made a joke about the ghost. Little kids laughing when no one should be, and had random cold patches appear next to me when sitting on a bench. It's been consistently happening on these walks, so it appears to know when our night walks are now. My sophomore year of high school I took a different bus to hang out with my friend for a bit before going home since they were nearby. I started walking home, eventually getting to my street before turning into my neighborhood. I was just walking on the sidewalk when I noticed a blonde woman sitting in a grey car with her window rolled down on the other side of the street facing me. At first I didn't think anything of it. I'm a very observant person, so I tend to look around a lot when I'm walking. I glance back over and I notice she has a big ass camera with a big ass lens on it, which she is clearly pointing at me and is following me with it as I walk in her direction. I see her take a flash photo of me, put the camera down, roll up her window and drive around the corner. I tried to walk along where she drove to see if she was hanging around the corner, but she was gone. It's been maybe 10 years and I still think about it. Beating my meat as one does. See movement in my peripheral. Someone looking at me through the gaps in the blinds of my window. As soon as I get up to look, dude books it. My face is right next to the window since I'm trying to get a look at him, so I can literally hear this dude run away. Never figured out what that was about. Didn't finish. Less than sign. One of my best friends died when I was a freshman in high school. He had aplastic anemia. Anyhow, it was very difficult to get into schoolwork right after his death. Had a test in English a couple weeks later that I honestly did not study for. I somehow got a 100% on the test. I still believe he guided me through it. Thanks, man. See you on the other side. Not sure if this is the weirdest, but it came to my mind first. One time in the 5th grade, my teacher informed us that we would be getting a new student. As soon as he said, "Her name is so and so, and she'll be joining us in 2 days," I had an image of a young girl. Black hair, Asian, glasses, large lips, and braces. When the new student finally arrived, my jaw dropped because despite not knowing anything about her, I somehow pictured her face exactly. Her features were so distinct too. It freaked me out that I somehow saw her before meeting her. BTW. I don't believe I'm psychic or anything. I've never had an experience like this since. This is so timely because I'm on the phone with my sister who just had another experience this morning. My mom has some weird intuition and I think my sister has inherited. 1. When she was 11. In a beach house in Rehoboth Beach, she saw a man walking up some stairs staring at her. There were no grown-ups in the house as she and my cousin were babysitting. 2. She periodically saw dark figures, shadows around our house or looking in our windows in the house growing up. She still sees these are her current one too. 3. While working at Greenfield Village, she was pushed down the stairs by a ghost at Cotswold Cottage after yelling at it for shutting windows. This one is always my crazy and favorite of hers. 4. This time she saw a shadow look up at her and disappear after she acknowledged it. I saw the Marfa lights in Texas. It wasn't creepy, just unexplainable. From what I've read, the phenomenon is somewhat rare, but there is a viewing area right off the highway. I got to the viewing area at dusk. The lights are small orbs that dance on the horizon. The best way I can describe it: the orbs moved up and down, side to side, split into separate orbs and came back together. There were only a few, maybe like 2 or 3 at a time. They look small and don't seem to go high up, but it's hard to judge distance because it's so flat. It was fun to watch, and there were a bunch of people at the viewing area all watching the same thing. A lot of people are convinced it's car lights. I don't think that's the case. It's been witnessed for hundreds of years, so cars wouldn't explain it. It's a flat landscape for miles, so it's like a nighttime mirage. I also noticed that a cold front had come in that day, so maybe weather plays a part. I don't know, but it was cool to see something unexplainable. Check it out if you get the chance. I was in high school and a group of classmates, our teacher, and I were exploring an abandoned and under renovation at the time mental hospital. Broad daylight. I saw nothing scary. Honestly, the building felt sad to me. We left, and as we're walking down the street, a classmate says, "Hey, there's blood on your leg." And indeed there was blood down the side of my right leg and on my sock. I stopped at a public restroom and washed my leg. It was unblemished. I hadn't bumped into something and gotten even the tiniest scrape or cut. There was no reason at all for blood to have run down my leg and dried there. When I was in elementary summer school, I went to see the school nurse for something. She looked at me in surprise and said, "Why are you still here?" I was confused. Asked her what she meant. She said, "You were here about 20 minutes ago and said you were going to stop coming to summer school. We had a whole conversation about it, but you insisted on leaving. Now you're back. What's going on?" I was stunned, as I'd been in class all along. This was about 45 years ago, and I'm sure she just mixed me up with another kid. But for many years I wondered if I had an evil twin. Later, this morphed into a theory that I time traveled back to that time, had reverse aged my body along the way, and took the day off in order to check out the 1970s on my own. Yeah, a few holes in that theory, but it's my mystery. Close bracket. The first thing my roommate said when I moved in was the house was haunted. Figuring it was a joke. Yeah, no. First big thing, I was in my roommate's room while she was taking a bath. She didn't have a door, just a white sheet in the door frame. I don't know why, but I looked up and there was a very distinct shadow standing on the other side of the sheet. Her and I were the only folks in the house. I was rather anxious for her to get out of the bath and refused to acknowledge it. Second thing to mention was when our super Christian friend came over. We were in the downstairs living room talking and she started on a Jesus kick. As soon as she started, all the doors from the kitchen to the living room slammed shut. We laughed it off as a breeze coming through the house. I don't feel like going into detail right now, but I distinctly remember my school having a shooting, and the killer killed 3 of my friends and killed 5 other people, then himself. But the next day, there was no trace any of those people had existed in the first place. So there was no way the shooter who didn't exist could shoot and kill 8 others who never existed. You could explain it with the ever-growing list of mental illnesses I have, but it still freaks me out every time I think about it. There's not one major thing but a series of little things. Shadows out of the corner of my eyes. Feeling watched. Sensing something in the darkness outside. Seriously. If you live in the country, don't leave your curtains open after dark. I've never been harmed, so it seems to be on a don't do shit. We're good sort of relationship. I was at a hotel in Ogden, Utah that people say is haunted. Long story short, I went down the hallway to use the bathroom at night, and when I tried to open the door to get out of the bathroom, it felt like someone was pushing against it. The door finally came open and I went back to my room. I don't believe in ghosts, which in my opinion makes it a whole lot scarier. Also, there was nothing that was blocking the door from opening. My whole family was in my front room, and all of a sudden one of my sister's giant Lego brick filled with little Lego bricks was flung and landed 5 centimeters from my face. I can't word it properly, but I'll try. A while back when I was walking home from school, I was heading down a street and there were 2 fences on each side. A cat was on the left fence and he jumped down the other side. He then came jumping up on the right fence. This is nowhere near as creepy as some of these comments, but it creeps me out and I cannot figure out what happened. One night, years ago, I was at my youth group sitting in our youth room. Our youth group goes to about 7:30, and I usually ended up leaving around 8. So my phone is in my backpack, which is in another room next to the one I'm in, and I'm playing games with my friends, etc. until around 7:30. Again, I do not have my phone with me from 6-7:30. When I enter back into the other room, I hang around for a little while longer like I normally do, not taking my phone out of my backpack, and leave around 8. I get in the car and for some reason that I can't remember, I check my camera roll, and there's a picture that was taken at 7:18 exactly. And it looks like a blurry picture of someone in the parking lot. I know that I did not have my phone when that picture was taken, and to this day, I have no idea where it came from. Needless to say, I was freaked out, and still am. The day I was going to kill myself, I had a really nice but intense encounter with this lady who claimed to be a psychic. I don't believe in psychics, but I believe her. Our encounter didn't last more than a minute, but it changed my life and it gave me months of strength. I swear to God, she saved my life. I still think about her somewhat frequently, even though this happened more than 3 or 4 years ago. A couple of years ago now, I was woken up out of a dead sleep. It was as if someone had whispered "dear" quietly into my ear. So close that I could feel it in my ear. I sat straight up in bed and was awake for a few hours after. I ended up getting up and turning the lights on, made a tea and watched a show to try and relax and distract myself again. I was terrified. I have this old vanity in my room. It's really creepy on its own. It's one of those cabinets where you put china plates and such. Except it's empty, due to unrelated reasons. I'm terrified of mirrors. To get to my light switch, I have to run past the cabinet and run back. That's creepy on its own. But sometimes when I'm sitting at my desk or running by, I swear I can see a figure in it. I like to think it's just a reflection, which would make sense. But with the fear of mirrors already in place, it just makes it pretty creepy for me. God, this is a good one. I have a long answer, but I'll try to shorten it. When I was a little kid, about 5 years or so, I had a friend named Laura. And one day after school I went to her house since she lived down my block. I knock on her door as usual and it swings open. So I run back home, tell my mother, and we both go back. The door is now slightly closed, so we both go in. The house is empty. Like the occupants just said, let's go to the store, kinda empty. But the 2 weird things are that the dining table was set with steaming plates of food and I have a picture with Laura. Okay, 3. And my mother met and remembers her as well. So when I was maybe 5-6, I'd have my doorway open, and this is why I'll never have my doorway open again. But at the time my dad would wake up at like 3-4 in the morning for work. Now what happened was I saw something in all orange walk by my door and go into the direction of our bathroom. Not the front door. It came from there. So it went to the bathroom and my parents' stairs up to the room, but I heard no sound at all. Nothing, and went to go check and never saw this orange figure ever again. Keep in mind it also went into the direction of a bedroom that my sister and I talked to the corner of that room at night. And it was just that one corner. One time I went to sleep Monday night and woke up Wednesday morning. Everyone I asked told me I had done my routine on Tuesday perfectly normally. Gotten out of bed. Washed and eaten. Went to school. Attended classes. Played video games for a few hours. Eaten. Then went back to sleep. But I remember absolutely none of it. I was driving my car late at night with the music near maximum. I was younger and had no care in the world and was on what I called a suicide ride. It's where I would drive as fast as I could on the near empty highway and treat the ride like a roller coaster. I was around 140 miles per hour and up ahead I saw brake lights in the left and middle lane. So I moved into the rightmost lane. The car that was braking in the middle lane was moving at maybe 30 miles per hour, slow. Especially for a highway. That car moved into the rightmost lane as I was flying towards it. I slammed on the brakes but I was about 15 yards away and my brakes were not the newest. I closed my eyes and braced for impact but when I opened them moments later. At a complete stop. There was no car. Only the car in the leftmost lane which was decently far ahead on this straight highway was visible. I was so shocked I pulled over and got out my car but there was no sign of this car that had cut in front of me. Till this day I have no idea what happened or anything. One night I woke up slightly and reached out to use the wall to push myself onto my other side and I half fell out of bed. My bed was 4 feet from the wall where it was usually flush against it. I slept in the living room for a week. But it never did happen again. Growing up I always had trouble sleeping. My mind was always racing and I suppose my inability to keep a consistent sleep schedule might have led to me experiencing sleep paralysis quite often. However, one time I recall waking up and it was daylight. My bed was against the wall and close to the door. I remember waking up and was facing the wall door so no one could have possibly been in the room. Suddenly I felt someone was behind me and heard a low hum. Like a long exhale is the best way to describe it I guess. I felt my bedsheet lift slowly and felt a box placed against my back and the bedsheet slowly fall back down. While this was happening I couldn't move but I was wide awake. As soon as the bedsheet fell back down I could move and of course there was nothing there when I turned around and the humming stopped. I have no idea what that was and I don't think I ever told anyone about it. I was 5 years old and we were at my grandma's house. My mom put me down for a nap in the spare room. I had my favorite blankie, handmade by my great grandma. So it was special, with me and my mom lay down with me for a second so I could fall asleep. I was closer to the wall. I was playing with my blankie and it slipped down between the bed and the wall. I told my mom and we tried to reach down and get it but it wasn't there. We looked under the bed, no blanket. My mom was confused and started taking off all the sheets and covers and it wasn't there. We pulled the bed out from the wall. No blankie. Nothing between the mattresses. There was no vent or anything it could have fallen in. There was nothing under the bed it could have gotten caught in. No pets. So nothing dragged it away. My grandma looked for it for days afterwards and never found it. I have thought about this for years and my mom and I still talk about it. I once had a dream about these two men and a woman at a water park. They were walking forward so my pov was behind them. The woman had one leg so she had one arm wrapped on one man's shoulder and her other arm wrapped on the other man's shoulder. I thought it was a bit strange but I thought nothing of it. Fast forward a few months later I went to El Salvador with my family and we went to a water park. At this water park I see those exact same people in the same pov I had seen in my dream. The whole world went black and I only saw those people. There was a black bar on the top and a black bar on the bottom. I only saw them and no one else. I have no clue why that occurred and no one believes me when I say that One time I was walking home along a route I take frequently which crosses a busy street. The crosswalk was counting down and was about to turn so I broke into a jog to cross the street before it hit zero. When I was 2 steps into the street I blinked and I was back on the curb and the crosswalk had just turned to a walk symbol like it hadn't just been counting down. I then crossed the street like normal. No idea what happened. I cross there all the time and it hasn't happened again. So a while back me and my friends were driving home after going to get some food. I was in the back seat and I looked out the window. Above the tree line I could make out this object just sitting still in the sky. Basically I think I saw a UFO. It was one of those that resembled a cigar. I kind of just stared in awe as we pasted it. Kind of like holy shit. That's a F-king UFO. Now where I live on some power lines telephone poles there are like basketballs or kickballs on them. IDKY. But I don't remember seeing any line through it so. Yeah. My best friend and I were driving around in the country just talking and hanging out. Since it was night we were both on the lookout for deer. As I turned around a corner, a huge animal standing on two legs came running out in front of my car and crossed the road into the field. We both saw it clearly. It looked like a wolf but was easily the size of a grown man and walking on two legs. To this day we still talk about how we think we saw a werewolf. A few years back I slept through my alarm for work, first and only time. That day was in the middle of winter and I remember cursing my tardiness on my way to work until I saw video from the news. The street I normally take was a sheet of ice and during the time I would have taken that route another vehicle had. The street was so icy that the vehicle began sliding down, slamming off vehicles from side to side on its way down, narrowly avoiding a person. I am not sure why I overslept that day but I am sure glad I did. I just opened at my workplace, 5 AM. Still pitch black out, and we always have kinda loud music playing so I was singing to it. As I was a male voice sang with me which was obvious to distinguish from mine as I'm female. That shop was known for having a ghost. Some say they saw shadows on the cameras. Last summer when I was back home, there were lots of strange lightnings in the sky. The sky was dark. And I lived on like 9th floor. So the view was pretty clear. My dad saw it first. And we both watched it go for several minutes. Probably around half an hour. I've never seen anything like this happen before. It wasn't the usual lightning per se, but some UFO shaped lights. And they were making rounds all over the sky. I think it was some natural phenomenon. But I forgot the name of it.